Okay guys, today we're revealing a brand new project truck, giving it a mini makeover, introducing its unique all-wheel drive powertrain, and swapping out the rear axle, all to kick off the transformation of this bone stock rig into a unique pro touring style pickup using lessons learned from a few of my past builds, with the final goal of creating the lightest, best handling, and fastest accelerating pickup in my fleet. The ugly truck has been taking up most of my time over the last couple of years, and it's a full-size extended cab Silverado powered by a Gen 7 big block Chevy with an 80mm turbo. I chose to swap in the 8.1 big block because of its massive torque potential and because of how uncommon they are to modify. And while the big block torque output does make for some pretty spicy rolling burnouts, it also comes with its challenges to try to put that torque down to the ground at the drag strip. My best quarter mile run to date was a 1092 to 125 miles an hour, but so far I was only able to accomplish that once. Well, the ugly truck was a lot of fun, both on the street and on the track. It did come with its frustrations as well. Now, I know we will get those sorted out in the future, and I'm still convinced that we're going to be able to run a 9-second pass. There were some other important lessons that I learned from another full-size build I did called the COPO truck. It started out life as a single cab step-side four-wheel drive Silverado, and it earned the nickname COPO truck because it was my goal to build the ultimate factory muscle truck using mostly OEM parts, as if the old COPO program still existed. It was powered by a 4.8-liter LS with an LSA supercharger on top, and it was backed up by a 4L80 transmission, but my absolute favorite part of the COPO truck was its transfer case. I chose the NV149 all-wheel drive transfer case that was normally found in the Silverado SS, Cadillac Escalade, and the Yukon Denali. And when combined with the instant torque of the LSA blower, the COPO truck could stick to almost any surface and managed to surprise quite a few muscle cars in the process. Now, I would say the COPO truck was just about perfect as it was. However, it did weigh just about 5,000 pounds. So when it came to things like cornering and handling, it did leave a little bit to be desired. But it did show me how much fun the combination of V8 power and all-wheel drive could be. So with this next build, we're going to combine all of that. Big power, lightweight, and all-wheel drive. So without further ado, let me introduce you to my '98 Chevy S-10. I owe credit to my brother-in-law Teague for finding this truck, and it ticks all of the boxes for me. It's an extended cab truck, which I love. It's a GM, which is pretty much all I build, and it's a little bit on the ugly side with its faded and dented exterior, along with its liberal use of AutoZone style aftermarket parts. It's a 98 model year S10 four-wheel drive, and it's powered by the reliable but underwhelming 4.3-liter V6. So one of the very first things that we're going to take care of is just this awful, hideous chrome stuff. I can't stand it. And I might be getting old, this is a sign of age, but I just prefer how a stock truck looks, sort of. So one of the first things that we're going to do today, in fact, is get rid of all this garbage. It's got those Euro tail lights on the back, third brake light. So I got a bunch of stuff. We'll take care of that real quick. But first, I've got a bunch of drivetrain parts I wanted to show you guys. Show you them in context because I've teased you with them and I've shown you a lot of this stuff before. But now that we have the truck, it might actually make sense as to what we're doing. Now, the big unknown at this point is the engine. Of course, it's got the 4.3 under the hood, and I could do like a Syclone clone, second gen build with the turbo V6, but I'm not gonna do that, and here's why. Because I hate how they sound. Like, as much as it would be cool, and they do have power potential, could put a LV3 in one of those new direct injected V6s in there, I just can't stand how those particular 6 cylinders sound. So that's off the table. I'll probably realistically end up doing something common like an LS or an LT just because I love the sound of an 8-cylinder, parts are readily available, and they're sort of inexpensive, especially compared to like the big block that I'm doing. And if I do an LS, I can of course compete in LS Fest, which is a ton of fun. Anyway, whole nother conversation for another time. Let me show you the rest of the drivetrain, and when I figure out the engine, I'll show you that too. But for now, this is all what we're working with. Transfer case, of course, I went with an all-wheel drive unit. This is the same type of NV149 that I used in the COPO truck. And I chose it because number one, I'm familiar with it. Number two, they're available and they're fairly robust and strong. I could have used the BorgWarner 4472 that the Syclones and Bravadas used. They're out there and they are fairly strong as well, but these were a little bit easier to find for me, and it seemed like there were a few more parts available for these. It's kind of 50-50. They're both good cases, but this is what I found. The price was right, so that's what we have. The BorgWarner, the New Venture or New Process 149. As far as the rear axle goes, under the truck right now is a 7.5-inch 10 bolt, I believe, which is just a ridiculously weak and wimpy rear axle. And I think my power goal for this build, I don't really have an official goal, but it's going to be like 600 to 800 to 900 horsepower. I want a lot. So the stock axle just isn't going to cut it, even though this only sends like 62, I think, % of the power, 68% of the power to the rear. So anyway, something a little bit stronger. This is from a ZR2 S10, S10 Blazer actually. It's an 8.5 10 bolt. It's a little bit wider, which is awesome because if you look at the track width, the rear end's a little bit narrower, so it'll kind of fix that. But also, it's the same basic axle that's under the ugly truck right now, so I know that it's going to hold up to a fair amount of power. As far as the front end goes, you'll notice we have two differentials. This one is from an Oldsmobile Bravada, and the reason I grabbed this is because it has a one-piece axle shaft over here with no disconnect mechanism that most four-wheel drive trucks have. That one has 373 gears in it. The truck actually has 342, so that'll be a little bit of a step up. The rear axle also has 373 gears, so they will match. But the only problem with the Bravada front axle is because it's in an aluminum housing, it is slightly weaker than another option which GM produced, also found in some ZR2 S10 manual transmission trucks, is this guy here. Also a 7.5 or 7.6 ring gear, but this one has a cast iron case. So a little bit heavier, definitely much more rigid because some of the problems that these have, when the pinion gear is turning, the ring gear wants to push away and the aluminum cases actually deflect a little bit. But I needed both of them because this has the one-piece axle where that has the disconnect, but that has the stronger center section with also 373 gears. So that's pretty much in a nutshell the drivetrain. I'm going to, probably not today, but one of the first things that we are going to do is swap out the axle just because it's taking up a lot of space in my shop and I can't stand the look of that narrow axle. I also, sidebar, did the same thing on a Suburban I had where they just, like, I don't get it. The rear sits so much narrower than the front. So anyway, little things that bug me, we'll fix that. And we have a stronger axle and we're re-gearing sort of at the same time because 373 is better than 342s. Yeah, so let's get started on the quick visual makeover. Just some parts that really annoy me because it's like, seriously, like who did this? Spray paint over clear Euro tails, definitely a no-go in my book. All right, so old, aftermarket, ugly, and painted over, stock. Not the most exciting thing in the world, but looks so much better. All right, put this in the trash. So pretty much everything here, I just ordered from Rock Auto. Not sponsored or anything, but they had pretty fair prices and they had everything. So it's just pretty much all OEM stock replacements, so nothing too exciting, but it works. It'll be brighter than before, and it looks better. Simple. Okay, what about the ones on the sides? Those good? So I burned through the box of goodies actually pretty dang quick, and we've got now basically an even more stock S10. But to me, it looks so much better just getting rid of that like awful aftermarket, like ugly chrome. And I mean, yeah, it's stock, but stock in this case to me looks so much better. I am missing a bow tie. I'm gonna have to track down one of those, but for now, it looks so much better. And then out back, same thing, tail lights. I didn't show you this, but I just put on some new tailgate cables. And I mentioned this in the last video, how I just love taking old, abandoned, neglected vehicles and just pouring way too much money into them and kind of fixing them up. And, you know, just little stuff like that, you know, like a broken tailgate cable. It's just no good. So we threw a new one on there. Well, two actually, just so they match and they're the same tension. The only thing I haven't done yet is I messed up when I ordered the third brake light. This has that aftermarket one on it still. I only ordered a lens, not the whole housing. So I'll either go to a junkyard, get a housing, put my new lens on it, or I'll just order the whole brand new unit. But that was like way more money than just the lens. So anyway, what's left in my box? I've got an interior door handle. I've got the headlight retaining brackets, which I didn't end up using. This guy here is just for the dash. Whenever we do the all-wheel drive conversion, it'll fill in the little spot where the 4x4 buttons are. Oh, one more thing I wanted to show you. I mentioned like a Syclone clone earlier and said, well, that's not really what we're doing, but it sort of kind of is. Because one of the things that I think made the Syclone pretty dang cool, aside from the all-wheel drive and aside from the turbo V6, is the fact that they used random stuff from the GM parts bin to kind of make it cooler. And on the interior, an example of that would have been, they used a floor shifter from maybe a GM car. I don't know what it was, but I'm doing the same thing there. I have from a S10 Blazer, this guy right here. I've got a floor shift assembly, found it in a junkyard. It's really dirty, so I'll spend some time cleaning it up. But floor shift assembly with the indicator, with the harness, with the cable, and of course the center console to go along with it. Really, really nasty and filthy, but we'll clean that up. Anyway, Monday is today, now officially over. We might actually have time this week to do the axle swap. So let's see what tomorrow brings. Well, no chunks fell out. All right, so little tip. If you have a rear end open and you want to know what gear ratio it has, not all the time, but often, it'll have two numbers. This one is 11/41. So if you want to know what the ratio is, you can count teeth and you can do it a number of different ways, but 41 divided by 11, boom, 373. Of course, you round up 0.27. 373 gears, just what we want. And the other good thing, no chunks missing from anything. This is a limited slip G80 differential. It's kind of like a locking posi. People call it a locker. It is not a locker at all. It's got clutch packs here and here. But anyway, yeah, looks pretty good. Eventually I will replace this with a True Track, probably keep the ratio, but for now we're just going to clean this out and reseal it. So just a short while later, we have the axle prepped, painted, welded, and ready to go underneath the S-10. Now, I probably skipped over a few things just process-wise, but here's the quick overview of what we've done to this axle. We did not move the spring purchase because those fit. We welded on the mounts for the sway bar. I did fully weld the axle tubes into the housing just to prevent it from twisting up, which more than likely never would have happened, but I figured since it's on the welding bench, we have the welder out, we might as well do it. I did the same thing on this truck here. And it's held up pretty good. Now, a lot of people don't give these 10 bolts a lot of credit. This is the same pretty much exact setup that I have under here. It's an 8.5 10 bolt 30 spline axle. And of course this has a true track in it, but it still has a stock axle shafts. This axle is held up with drag radials with a 5,000 pound truck with a turbo big block that legitimately puts down 1,100 and some pound-feet of torque at the rear tires, verified by a dyno. So in my S10, that's going to be much lighter and probably have not quite as much torque. I have no concerns at all about this axle holding up. Eventually, I think what I'm going to do is, because I don't like the G80 that's in here, the semi-locking limited slip, whatever you want to call it, differential, I do want to put a true track in it. My plan is actually to pull the true track out of this, put a spool in here with more splines in the axle shaft, and then we'll put the true track in here because, like I said, it's the same thing. But anyway, the axle is all ready to go. So let's throw it in. Well, not that truck. We'll throw it in the other truck. Remember that thing I mentioned earlier in the video about measure twice and cut once? Yeah, I should have changed that to measure 3 times because there's one very important measurement that I totally neglected to take that's going to pump the brakes on this project. And there's another thing I found that is going to require some professional help. That's the drive shaft. So we'll start with that area. The drive shaft now is too long because the distance from the axle center line to the pinion flange on the 7.5 10 bolt is about an inch shorter. Or in other words, this pinion sticks out a little bit further on the 8.5 10 bolt. Plus, this has a different size U-joint than the old axle does over there. So we'll just get our drive shaft shortened, put a conversion joint on there. Where's it? Hanging up there. And that'll take care of that. But the bigger issue, the one I did not measure, which I kind of did think like maybe I should measure pinion angle, but then I was like, nah, because the width is the same, there'll be no need to. Of course, they'll put the axle perches in the same exact angle between the ZR2 and a regular S10. Incorrect, they did not. They're about 5 degrees different. So the pinion on the ZR2 axle in the S10 points uphill way too much. So now I'm gonna have to actually do the thing which I thought I was not gonna have to do, chop the axle perches off and weld some new ones on. Now, I won't show you guys that today. That's just pretty much, you know, straightforward cutting, angle finding, and welding. And I'll get that knocked out before you see the truck in a future video. But I also wanted to show you guys the wheels that we're running, because this is something I'm really excited about. These are, I believe, Grand Sport, or pretty sure Grand Sport Corvette wheels. I found them on Marketplace. It's a square set too, which is awesome, because they're 17 by 9s all the way around. And with an all-wheel drive vehicle, ideally you want to have a same exact tire size. And a lot of Corvette wheels are staggered by about 1 inch, and sure, you could put a similar tire size on. And yeah, there's also options where you can do like a 245/45 on the front, I think, and a 275/40 on the back, and they'll work out to be about the same circumference. But regardless, I would much rather have the same tire on the front and the back. Obviously, I have a set of 4. This is just mock-up. I was kind of checking clearance around the brakes, the spacing to the leaf spring, and most importantly, how far do these stick out from the body? And it's actually not too bad. Right now, this axle is 4 inches wider than the original, but even though it's 4 inches wider, now the rear is only 1 inch wider than the front, where before the rear was 3 inches narrower. So that's kind of where the wheel sticks out. Like I said, flush-ish, maybe sticks out a tiny bit, but my goal, I want to find some ZR2 flares, front and back, and kind of mimic like that. You know, the Syclones had a body kit, so I wanted, not a body kit per se, but I've always liked the look of the ZR2 S10. Now you might be wondering, why didn't I just buy a ZR2 S10? And at this point, that probably would have been a better idea, but that's all right. This truck, we got it for a bargain. I'm telling you, we got this truck for a steal. So it's only got 115,000 miles on it too. So it's a great truck. Paint's definitely faded. It came from Arizona and all that stuff. And yeah, like I said, ZR2 flares, I think, is gonna really, really set this thing off when we get it done. So yeah, I'm happy with the new project, guys. I think the next thing I'm going to do on it that you'll see, we'll do the all-wheel drive conversion. I want to get the drivetrain pretty much all sorted out. Suspension, this needs a ton of suspension work up front. You know, ball joints are shot, tie rods are shot, idler, pitman, like all that stuff. This truck is kind of scary to drive. I put about 500 miles on it just going back and forth to work. Yeah, it's definitely sketch to drive, but we'll take care of all that. We'll get the chassis sorted. We'll get the good wheels and tires on here. We'll lower it a little bit. I'll show you all that, as I always do on this channel. And guys, I'm really excited about this project, because like I said earlier, I think this is going to be my best handling and possibly fastest accelerating vehicle in the fleet, given what we have currently. Of course, the ugly truck and the 4-wheel drive drag truck are going to be much, much faster in a straight line when we're done, but that's a new project, guys. Thanks for watching. Come back soon. All right, before we go real quick, just wanted to get the truck on the ground and show you what it looks like with a slightly wider axle with all 4 stock wheels on it. So 4 inch wider than stock ZR2 axle, and the tires actually don't, like right now, this is almost what I would consider to be perfect. Definitely you can tell the rear's a little bit wider than the front, but now they're both flush-ish instead of having the rears like sucked way in, which I absolutely cannot stand that look. Oop, tripping over my own stuff. So yeah, definitely looks a lot better. The best solution would be a custom width axle, but for like 300 bucks for a ZR2 axle at the junkyard, you can't go wrong. I really like it.